The dining room at Hotel Shangri-La offers signature dishes amidst a stunning vista overlooking the Pacific Ocean and Palisades Park. Featuring tantalizing new American cuisine by Chef Kareem Shah, utilizing locally sourced meat and hand-picked selections from the weekly Santa Monica Farmers Market, complemented by a curated cocktail, wine, and cordials menu.
Hi, I'm Phil Brock. This is Brock and Your Block, and this week we're going to talk about domestic violence, and we're going to talk about the children of domestic violence survivors. From a male perspective, we're going to talk to David Pisarra, who was a lawyer in Santa Monica for the last 16 years, and he's in the midst of doing a documentary that's called What About the Men? Exploring the hidden side of domestic violence. David, good to see you.
You too, Phil. How are you?
And tell me about domestic violence. Tell me about your practice, and tell me why you're doing a documentary.
You know, I've been an attorney in Santa Monica for, as you said, 16 years now. During that time, we've done an awful lot of domestic violence cases. And we have represented both men and women who have been victims and abusers. And that's one of the misconceptions among society, is that the majority of violence is perpetrated by men against women. And studies are showing that really it's more like at least a 50-50.
Really?
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where my mother and father were physically beating each other up. The judge, when I was 11 years old, threw them both in jail because he was horrified by them at that time. They put me on the witness stand during their divorce trial. Now, my dad was someone, though, who religiously wanted to have his visitation rights, wanted to be there for me.
Yeah.
And but there was a constant clash. My whole time growing up between my mom and dad.
Sure.
My mom wouldn't come to my Santa Monica High School graduation because
Dad's there.
Dad was there.
Right.
My mom wouldn't come to my college graduation because
Dad
was there. Yeah. So talk to me about what you're doing and how hopefully times have changed, I hope for the better, since I was a little kid.
Actually, I think times have not changed for the better. I think they've changed far worse, because what's happened is, since Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered, the laws have become so much more expansive. What we've done is we've made domestic violence from what you and I grew up with, mom and dad fist fighting, broken bones. My mom, when I was 5, taught me how to knife fight.
Well, so we both grew up in very traumatic households.
Friday night fights were in my living room, and it was both aggressors. And that's what's really the misconception among the vast majority of people, is that one party is the aggressor. And the reality is, in 50% of domestic violence cases, it's mutual aggression. I pick at you, you pick back, you pick me, I pick at you, and then next thing you know, one of us is throwing blows. And when you look at it, it's like, okay, well, who was really the aggressor? It's hard to tell. It's very rare. It's only 25% of the time is a man the primary aggressor, and 25% of the time is the woman the primary aggressor. Generally, what ends up happening is it's an escalation, because the whole cycle of domestic violence is power and control and sniping at each other that escalates. That's what causes the majority of domestic violence.
Where do the kids figure in this? Because I spent a lot of my growing up years at the Boys Club, now the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Monica, and I was a teacher, and I spent so much time trying to help the youth of our region. I was always concerned when I was teaching about, at that time, latchkey kids.
Right.
Parents who both worked and let their kids stay home alone in the afternoon because they had to work to make a living. You've told me that it's now exponentially worse.
It's gotten much worse, because what ends up happening these days is there's so many more single parents. There's so many more single moms that are trying to raise kids by themselves. You know, by 2020, studies are saying 50% of all school-age children will be in single-parent households, and that's mostly single moms with dad not around.
And that, to me, is a crisis in our society. Beyond a crisis, because the value of having a man and a woman in a child's life growing up, it can't even be measured. We're talking about mental health problems. You know, we've been talking about those a lot with gun violence.
Let's back that up.
Okay.
There was a book written by Paul Rayburn called Do Fathers Matter, and it's written. He is a reporter for, I think, Scientific American. So, well-established reporter. did a whole bunch of research, compiled a bunch of research, and what the research shows is that men as fathers play a primary role in children's language development because of the way they play. That's where they get a lot of their language development. So when you take that out of the mix, what ends up happening is the child actually develops slower by not having a father in their life. Their language development is delayed.
National Domestic Violence Month, and this is a good time to touch on this issue. You've been touching on this issue for many years. And how do we solve this? How do we find a way to lessen the amount of single-parent households, and how do we find a way to make sure that the men who want to be involved in their children's lives get involved?
I think that the solution is not necessarily to try and fix single-parent households, but to make sure that we have dual-parent children. It's okay to have single-parent households, but both parents need to be in the child's life. Children are fine with mom's house and dad's house. They just need the interaction with
But
mom
they
and dad.
need to have two parents
That's
who are actively involved. And I taught for a number of years, and I'm reiterating how important that is, that men and women, fathers and mothers, are actual parents in their child's lives, even if they can't get along themselves.
Exactly, and that's why we have parenting classes. We have Our Family Wizard. That's why we tell people to go to co-parenting classes, which is specific.
What's Our Family Wizard?
Our Family Wizard is an online email program where both parties exchange emails through an archived server, so that I can't send you an email and then change what I sent you, and then submit what I changed to the court.
Ah, okay.
I can't play
Got
games.
it. Okay.
Is the goal.
Got it.
And there's a calendaring program that allows people to exchange Saturdays. So I'm supposed to have Bobby this Saturday, but we're going to switch because I got to go out of town, and then I'll take next Saturday. The program will keep track of it and allow for that to balance out.
Okay.
Those are the tools we use to make sure that children maintain two-parent families.
Do most men, are you finding that the men you represent want to be in their children's lives, or are they happy just to say, here, I'm paying you, and I'm out of that child's life? Because to me, that's very tragic.
I would say that honestly, the majority of our clientele, the majority of our fathers, would gladly pay more child support if they could have more time with their kids.
Okay.
They want to be a part of their child's life. And the problem is, the way the system is set up, it's actually designed to incentivize mom taking more time away from dad because that translates into more money. The system is backwards. If it was designed so that we had a baseline of 50-50 custody and then we figured out child support, there wouldn't be the battles. And the goal of reducing domestic violence is a good one, and the way in which we do that is we bring it into the light. We start talking about it, which is what we've done with everything else in this world that we want to bring a reduction to. So by bringing to light the fact that men are victims of domestic violence, I'm hoping to reduce the incidence of it. Because by raising the awareness that men can be victims, we will then make people more aware of their behavior and hopefully prevent it. And that's why we're doing the movie, What About the Men? Exploring the hidden side of domestic violence. It's a 360 review of domestic violence from the male victim survivor's perspective. We have survivors who have been interviewed, psychologists who have been interviewed, executive director of the Valley Oasis domestic violence shelter in Lancaster is in the movie so far. We have a long line of other psychologists and experts that we want to interview, because what I want to do is bring light to the topic. I don't want this to be a movie that's about four guys who are sitting around a table complaining about their evil exes. That doesn't help anybody. What I want to do is make it a movie that explains what
And there are
problem is.
evil exes who are both male and female.
Absolutely, and absolutely. So what I want to do is bring light to the topic, and that's the purpose of the movie. That's why we designed the special ribbon, which is the domestic violence ribbon, but with a blue streak, obviously blue for the boys.
I'd like to see divorces reduced. I'd like to see, whether they're married or not,
Right.
that people get a chance to actually live together, and especially if they have children. Think of those children, because we talk every day about how they're our future, but it affects children every day. I've been affected all my life. You've been affected
Absolutely.
all your life. And even though we're examples of overcoming
Right.
the abuse that was in our childhoods, I think it's so important that parents think of their children first, and they don't always do that. So thank you, David.
Thanks.
Good to talk to you. For Brock and Your Block, I'm Phil Brock. We'll see you next week.